Washington Democrats are making a very strong effort this year to make the state of Washington as separate from the rest of the country as they possibly can. Today, I'm going to tell you about a bill that is not just concerning to parents and citizens in Washington state, but regardless of where you live in the country, especially if you live next door in Idaho, you're going to want to listen up and hear about this latest bill that's dropped in Washington. Hey, everybody, I'm Julie Barrett, founder of Conservative Ladies of America and Conservative Ladies of Washington. And I'm back again with another bill of the day for Washington State. Today, we are going to be talking about Senate Bill 5632. This bill was just dropped on Friday, January 31st, by Senator Drew Hansen. This bill is an act relating to protecting the confidentiality of records and information that may be relevant to another state's enforcement of its laws. Now, when I first read that sentence, it reminded me of a bill from 2 sessions ago, which was House Bill 1469, which is also known as the Shield Law. What the Shield Law does is it essentially makes Washington state a sanctuary state for what they call protected healthcare services, which includes abortion and so called gender affirming care. So it allows kids to be able to come to Washington, or adults for that matter, but anybody can come to Washington for those types of services, and they will be shielded from the laws in their home state. They will be able to come to Washington and receive those services, and those services are actually also paid for by Washington taxpayers, and their home state can't really do anything about it, and they can't do anything against the providers of the services either. This is a very dangerous policy that Washington has because it can allow for abortion trafficking or transgender trafficking. It went along with Senate Bill 5599 during the 2023 session. So those pair make Washington a very dangerous state for minor children. When I first saw the title of Senate Bill 5632, it really sent off those alarm bells of the previous year's bills. Senate Bill 5632 focuses explicitly on protecting the confidentiality of records and information related to protected healthcare services when there's risk of enforcement from other states. So, for example, if law enforcement from the state of Florida was trying to get information about a patient or a provider from the state of Washington, they would be prohibited from doing that per this proposed legislation. It would prevent Washington from aiding in the enforcement of out of state laws that criminalize or penalize activities that are legal in Washington, abortion or gender affirming care. So, for instance, next door in Idaho, it is illegal for minor children to have these services. And it is illegal for someone to take a child from Idaho without their parents' authorization for these services. But under this law, there wouldn't be any recourse for a parent in Idaho whose child was taken to Washington. This is basically saying that they're not going to cooperate with any out of state legal efforts to get information about the patient, about the provider, about any of the obtaining and performing of these services. So let's take a look a little bit deeper into this bill. This bill declares that in Washington state, it's against public policy to enforce laws from other states that would penalize activities related to protected healthcare services that are legal in Washington state. So, I mean, if you take any activities that are related to that, that could expand pretty widely. And even, it makes me think, and I'm no lawyer, so I'm just throwing this out because it makes me think, well, housing somebody that is getting these services, anybody like in a host home or a shelter or something like that, it would protect that as well. It says that state officials, law enforcement, and the courts are prohibiting from aiding in the arrest or enforcement of such out-of-state laws regarding these services. And finally, state entities must not cooperate with or provide information to out-of-state federal agencies for the enforcement of laws contrary to Washington's policy on protected health care. So, what we're seeing in Washington already in response to the Trump administration is that they don't want to cooperate with the enforcement of any federal laws. This is kind of a repeat of what happened during the first Trump administration. And unfortunately, Ferguson and the new Attorney General, Nick Brown, they are gearing up to fight these. And so they will likely be successful in getting stays or injunction. I don't know what you call it, what the legal term is when they're able to stop that federal enforcement in their own state. So I can guarantee you that Ferguson and his team are all ready for whatever's coming down the pipe from the Trump administration. And I think if you live in Washington, it's very important that you prepare yourself for this likely reality. Now, there's also a clause in here that says businesses in Washington who are providing electronic communication services cannot comply with out of state legal processes unless accompanied by attestation confirming the process isn't related to enforcing laws against protected healthcare providers. So I would take that to mean your email services, your cell phone services, they would have to keep all that information private as well. So Washington is really putting up its wall against the rest of the country and making their own laws and saying we're not going to cooperate with these other states who have put policies in place that protect children, protect citizens from some of these laws. So this is very scary. And for me, as a parent who moved out of the state to go to a state that would allow me to parent my child and would have laws that would protect my child, this is very scary. Now, my children are all over the age of 18 now, but if you are a parent living in Idaho or another red state like Texas, Tennessee, any of these red states that do have policies that protect kids, this is something to be very concerned about, because what these people do who get into this trafficking business with these kids, they infiltrate through the school system. I know it's easy to think that if you've got your kids in private school or something like that, that they're going to be safe. I would just urge all parents to be vigilant with your kids, even if they're not in public school, and just make sure that you have conversations. That's the biggest thing, is to communicate with your kids. So here we've got yet another crazy bill filed this year for Washington State. It'll be interesting to see if this one moves forward. I tend to be inclined to think that it will, considering what Ferguson and the administration is saying they want to do to keep Washington a stronghold against what the Trump administration is doing on a federal level. So we will keep you posted. I've got links below for more details on this bill, and you can go read it for yourself. Make sure that you are subscribed to the channel and have your notifications turned on, because as you know, many of our videos are time sensitive and we have calls to action. Please share this video with as many people as you can so that they know, even if they're outside of Washington, this is something that all parents in this country need to know, because this is something that we're going to probably see happen, not just in Washington, but probably the whole West Coast, maybe New York and some of these other blue states as well. It's important for citizens and parents to be very vigilant, even though we do have a Republican president. He's not coming to save us. We've got to save ourselves. So thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again next time.